In a vast and prosperous African kingdom, the reign of King Ayo and Queen Tiwa had brought peace and prosperity to the land. The royal couple was beloved by their subjects, known for their wisdom, compassion, and unwavering commitment to the well-being of their people. But despite all their blessings, there was one thing that the king and queen desired above all else: an heir to the throne. For years, they had prayed and hoped for a child, and finally, their prayers were answered. Queen Tiwa gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, whom they named Obi. The kingdom rejoiced at the news of the prince's birth, and grand celebrations were held throughout the land. The future of the kingdom seemed secure, with a strong and healthy heir to one day take the throne. However, amidst the joy and festivities, a dark cloud loomed on the horizon. A witch, known for her prophetic visions, came to the palace with a dire warning. She spoke of a terrible fate that awaited the young prince, a fate that would bring ruin and despair to the kingdom. "Your son," the witch said, her voice low and ominous, "will grow up to kill his father and sleep with his mother. This is the destiny that has been written for him, and there is nothing that can be done to change it." King Ayo and Queen Tiwa were horrified by the witch's words. They couldn't fathom the idea of their beloved son committing such heinous acts, and yet they knew that the witch's prophecies were never wrong. For days, they agonized over what to do. They couldn't bring themselves to harm their child, but they also couldn't risk the prophecy coming true. In the end, they made a heartbreaking decision. They would abandon their son, leaving him far away from the kingdom in the hopes that distance would change the course of his fate. Under the cover of night, the king and queen took their sleeping son and placed him in a basket. They rode for hours, deep into the wilderness, until they came to a small remote village. There they left the basket on the doorstep of a humble home with a note that simply read, "Please take care of our son." As they rode away, their hearts heavy with grief and guilt, they couldn't help but wonder if they had made the right choice. Would their son be safe? Would he grow up happy and healthy, never knowing the truth of his royal blood? Years passed and the kingdom moved on. King Ayo and Queen Tiwa tried to put the memory of their lost son behind them, focusing instead on ruling their kingdom with justice and compassion. But despite their best efforts, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that a piece of their hearts had been left behind on that fateful night. Meanwhile, in the remote village where he had been left, Obi grew up strong and brave. The family who had taken him in raised him as their own, showering him with love and affection. Obi knew nothing of his true origins, but he always felt a sense of restlessness, a yearning for something more. As he grew older, Obi began to hear whispers of unrest in the kingdom. The people were suffering, they said, under the weight of King Ayo's increasingly tyrannical rule. Crops were failing, and famine had begun to spread across the land. Obi, driven by a deep sense of justice and compassion for the common people, decided to take action. He gathered a group of like-minded individuals and began to plan a rebellion against the king. Word by word, the rebellion grew until it had become a formidable force. Obi, with his natural charisma and strategic mind, quickly emerged as the leader of the movement. He rallied the people behind him, promising to bring an end to the suffering and restore the kingdom to its former glory. As the rebellion marched towards the capital, King Ayo grew increasingly desperate. He knew that his reign was in jeopardy, and he was willing to do whatever it took to maintain his grip on power. In a final bloody battle, the two armies clashed on the outskirts of the city. Obi, fighting on the front lines, found himself face to face with the king himself. In that moment, he felt a strange sense of recognition, a feeling that he couldn't quite place. But there was no time for contemplation. The battle raged on, and in the end, it was Obi who emerged victorious. With a final decisive blow, he struck down the king, watching as the life drained from his eyes. As the people celebrated their newfound freedom, Obi took his place on the throne. It was a role he had never sought, but one that he knew he must embrace for the good of the kingdom. But even as he settled into his new life as king, Obi couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He was haunted by strange dreams and visions, images of a past he couldn't quite remember. And then, one day, everything changed. As Obi last night took the king's wives as his own, as was customary for a new ruler, Queen Tiwa caught sight of a birthmark on his shoulder. A birthmark that she would recognize anywhere. With a gasp of horror, she realized the truth. Obi was her long-lost son, the child she had abandoned all those years ago. And now, the prophecy that she had sought to escape had come to pass. Obi had killed his father and already slept with his mother. Obi too was overcome with shock and revulsion as the realization dawned on him. He had spent his entire life fighting against the very fate that had been foretold for him, only to inadvertently fulfill it in the end, unable to bear the weight of what he had done and what was yet to come. Obi fled from the palace, disappearing into the wilderness, just as he had been left there as a child. He knew that he could never return, that the kingdom would forever be haunted by the specter of the prophecy that had defined his life. And so, the lost heir of the kingdom vanished, leaving behind a trail of broken heart and shattered dreams. The people mourned the loss of their beloved king, even as they grappled with the shocking truth of his identity. In the years that followed, the kingdom struggled to rebuild itself. The scars left by Obi's reign and sudden departure were deep and lasting, and it would take generations for the land to fully heal. But if even amidst the pain and sorrow, there were those who held on to hope. They believed that one day the lost heir would return, that he would find a way to break free from the chains of his destiny and lead the kingdom to a brighter future. And so, the legend of Obi, the lost heir of the kingdom, lived on. It became a story passed down from generation to generation, a tale of tragedy and triumph, of the power of faith and the strength of the human spirit. For in the end, Obi's story was not just about the fulfillment of a prophecy, but about the choices we make and the paths we choose. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a glimmer of light, a chance for redemption and renewal. And though the kingdom would never be the same, it would endure, forever shaped by the legacy of the lost heir who had changed its course forever.